When a man speaks of personal unworthiness, he is not reciting some hollow phrase he learned to sound humble. He is not weaving together a tapestry of modest words to win favor in the eyes of others. True personal unworthiness runs deeper than the surface of a man's vocabulary. It is something that haunts the very core of who he is. It is not an act. It is not a cloak that can be thrown on before stepping up and then shrugged off when the task is done. It is a reality he lives with, often in silence when no one else is watching. To confess personal unworthiness is to make an admission that goes against every instinct of pride and self-preservation. It is to stand naked before the eyes of truth and say, I have nothing in myself, I deserve nothing, I am nothing apart from mercy. And those are not easy words to say. The flesh rises up against them. The flesh wants to boast, it wants to justify itself. It wants to cling to some achievement, some decency, some record of good deeds, some scrap of honor. But when a man is truly crushed under the weight of what he knows about himself, all those excuses wither away. They are ashes on his tongue. He knows better. He has looked in the mirror of truth, and what he saw there stripped away every pretense. It is one thing to know facts about personal unworthiness. It is another thing entirely to feel it, to be utterly convinced that, left to yourself, you would be nothing but a monument to ruin and failure. To understand personal unworthiness is to live each day with the awareness that you have been spared from destruction, not because you earned it, not because you were worthy of rescue, but because someone else intervened on your behalf. It is to look at your own heart, your own motives, your own secret thoughts, and to tremble. It is to know that even the best things you have ever done were stained with pride, with selfish ambition, with impurity. Some may hear words like these and think them exaggerated. They may assume that such a view of oneself is morbid or unhealthy, but that is only because they have never truly seen themselves in the blinding light of holiness. In the dim light of human comparison, a man may find reason to boast. He may compare himself to others and conclude that he is not so bad. He may gather up his accomplishments, his virtues, his religious observances, and build a tower in his mind that reaches the clouds. But when the true light dawns, all that is burned away like mist before the sun. When a man catches even a glimpse of the true standard, he realizes how far he has fallen. He realizes that the tower he built is not a tower at all, it is a ruin. Personal unworthiness is not simply an admission of past mistakes. It is an ongoing recognition of present need. It is not just saying, I was once a sinner. It is saying, even now, apart from mercy, I am capable of the worst evil. It is not a memory, it is a constant reminder. It is the posture of a beggar who knows that he cannot survive a single day without grace. It is the heart, cry of someone who understands that every good thing in him is borrowed, not owned. It is the steady, sober awareness that even now, the heart is deceitful above all things and desperately sick. There is a strange freedom in confessing personal unworthiness. It crushes pride, yes. It lays the soul low, yes. But in doing so, it also frees a man from the exhausting burden of trying to pretend. He no longer has to posture. He no longer has to maintain the illusion that he is something great. He can finally rest not in himself, but in the mercy that was poured out on him when he had nothing to offer. He can finally speak and act from a place of truth, knowing that whatever fruit comes from his life is not the result of his own strength, but the result of someone working through him. When a man truly embraces personal unworthiness, it changes the way he approaches every aspect of life. He is slower to judge others, for he sees in them the same brokenness he has seen in himself. He is quicker to extend grace, for he knows how much grace he himself has needed. He is more cautious with praise, more wary of fame, more eager to direct attention away from himself and toward the only one who is worthy of it. He walks more carefully, not because he fears losing his status, but because he fears misrepresenting the one who rescued him. His failures no longer destroy him because his hope was never in his performance. His successes no longer intoxicate him because he knows they are not truly his own. Personal unworthiness is not a shackle that binds a man to self-loathing. It is the key that frees him from self-deception. It is the ground where real joy can grow, where real love can take root. A man who has faced the full ugliness of his own heart and found mercy, there is a man who can love deeply, because he knows what it is to be loved undeservedly. He can forgive freely because he knows what it is to be forgiven freely. He can serve selflessly because he knows that he was served when he was helpless to repay. To carry a sense of personal unworthiness is to walk through life with a limp that never quite goes away. It is a wound that never fully heals, and yet it is a wound that reminds the soul every day that it is alive only by the sheer grace of another. It is a mark, a brand, a testimony written not in ink but in scars. It is not a posture you can fake for long, because when life presses hard against you, when the lights go out, and the applause fades, and you are left alone with yourself, the truth will rise to the surface. Real personal unworthiness is not defeated by time. It is not washed away by success. It is not softened by the passing years. If anything, the more a man grows, the more clearly he sees how far he still has to go. The closer he draws to the light, the more aware he becomes of the shadows still lurking in his own heart. He does not outgrow his need for mercy. He feels it more keenly with every step. And in that painful, beautiful awareness, he finds his truest strength not in himself, but in the one who has never, not for a moment, let him go. Would you also like me to create a second version that's a bit even rougher and heavier, depending on the emotional intensity you're aiming for? Fire, just say the word, of course. Here's a 1,000-word explanation of the keynote gratitude for opportunity. Exactly in the natural human style, you asked for no subheadings, no conclusion, just a real heartfelt tone. Gratitude for opportunity is not something that can be manufactured on demand. It is not a line you say because it's expected, and it's certainly not a polite gesture to check off a list. Real gratitude, deep and trembling gratitude, comes from knowing you should not even be here in the first place. It comes from a heart that has tasted the bitterness of being lost and the sweetness of being found, and every time it is given a chance to speak, to serve, to lift up the name of what is good and right, it feels the weight of the mercy behind it. A man who knows what he deserves and sees what he has been given will never open his mouth lightly. Every opportunity feels like a miracle he didn't earn, a kindness he can't repay. There is something about standing in a place you have no natural right to stand in that stirs a kind of trembling inside of you. It's not the trembling of fear alone, though fear is surely there. It's the trembling of awe. It's the soul whispering, "How can this be? How could someone like me be asked to do something so important?" It's the overwhelming realization that you have been handed a treasure you are not worthy to carry, a message you are not worthy to speak, a place you are not worthy to fill. Gratitude pours out of a heart like that because it can't be contained. It rises up because it must. It spills over because the soul has been pressed down so low by mercy that it has nowhere else to go but up. When a man feels this kind of gratitude, it touches everything he does. He does not drag his feet. He does not roll his eyes at the tasks before him. He doesn't complain about the load he has to bear, because he knows he could be sitting in silence with nothing to carry at all. Every moment is seen as a sacred gift. Every word he is allowed to speak feels like a note in a song he could never have written on his own. There is no room for arrogance here. There is no room for entitlement. The man who is truly grateful knows that if justice alone had ruled his life, he would be sitting in the shadows right now, forgotten and disqualified. But grace ruled instead, and grace opened a door that should have stayed shut. There is a difference between being excited for an opportunity and being grateful for it. Excitement can be shallow. Excitement can be self-centered. Excitement can be more about what a man hopes to gain from the opportunity than what he hopes to give. Gratitude is different. Gratitude doesn't ask, "What's in it for me?" Gratitude asks, "How can I be faithful to the gift I've been given?" Gratitude doesn't puff up a man's chest, it bends his knees. Gratitude doesn't demand recognition, it offers itself up in quiet devotion whether or not anyone notices. A grateful man is not thinking about how to use the opportunity to build his own name. He's thinking about how to honor the one who gave him the chance at all. There is a kind of sacredness that surrounds an opportunity when you know you didn't earn it. It humbles you. It silences you before it sends you out to speak. You find yourself pleading in prayer, not for success, not for applause, but for the simple mercy that you would not waste what has been placed in your hands. You feel a heaviness, but it is not a burden of shame. It is the weight of meaning. It is the preciousness of knowing that this moment was written into the story long before you arrived, and somehow, against every reason and every odds, you were invited to step into it. Gratitude for opportunity also changes how a man sees himself. It rips away the illusion of self, sufficiency. It strips the heart of its stubborn belief that it got here by its own strength. A grateful man looks back over the road that brought him here and sees, not a trail of his own accomplishments, but a trail of mercies, each one more undeserved than the last. He sees the times he should have been disqualified, the times he should have been overlooked, the times he almost destroyed his own future with his own foolishness, and yet here he stands, not because he is great, but because grace is greater than his sin, his weakness, his past. There are moments when a man who truly feels gratitude for opportunity will be overwhelmed by it. Sometimes the heart grows too full for words, and the eyes fill with tears that no speech can explain. It is the silent cry of a soul that knows how high a price was paid, so that he could have a moment like this. It is the deep ache of knowing that so many others are more qualified, more talented, more deserving, and yet he was chosen. Gratitude makes a man small in the best way. It makes him a servant even when he is called to stand in front. It makes him careful with every word, every action, every breath, because he knows that he is handling something far bigger than himself. Real gratitude also refuses to let a man waste what he has been given. It drives him to labor harder, to pray longer, to love deeper. It keeps him from laziness. It keeps him from entitlement. It keeps him from treating holy things like common things. A grateful heart burns with a quiet fire, a fire that says, "If I have been trusted with this, even for a moment, then I must be faithful with all my strength. I must not treat this lightly. I must not squander the chance." Gratitude for opportunity transforms not only the man but the atmosphere around him. Others can see it. Others can feel it. It's hard to explain, but there's something different about a person who knows they didn't deserve their place and yet walk in it with holy reverence. They don't have to say much about themselves. Their posture says it all. Their spirit says it all. There is a certain humility, a certain weight, a certain beauty in the way they serve, because they are not serving for the sake of being seen. They are serving out of an overflow of thankfulness that cannot be faked or forced. When a man is filled with gratitude for opportunity, he walks into every room knowing that he is not owed a single thing. He speaks with a trembling voice, not because he doubts the truth, but because he is so aware of how unworthy he is to carry it. He loves the people he is sent to, not because they will applaud him, but because he knows he has been loved beyond what he deserved. Gratitude takes what would otherwise be a heavy burden and transforms it into a sacred joy. Gratitude reminds him every day that he stands where he stands only because mercy made a way. Would you also like me to continue with the next keynote after this, keeping exactly the same style and flow? Just let me know. I can keep building it for you, of course. Here's the 1,000-word explanation of the keynote Burning Responsibility, written in a natural, human tone without any subheadings or conclusion, just like you asked. There is a weight that presses down on a man when he understands the burning responsibility he carries. It is not the kind of weight that comes from outside expectations or the opinions of others. It is not the pressure to perform or to impress. It is something deeper, heavier, something that wraps itself around the soul and refuses to let go. It is the knowledge that what has been entrusted to him is not a game, not a hobby, not a platform to elevate himself, but a matter of life and death, of eternity pressing in on every word, every choice, every moment. It is a fire that cannot be extinguished, a burden that refuses to be shrugged off. When a man feels this responsibility burning within him, it changes the way he sees everything. He can no longer speak lightly about serious things. He can no longer entertain the thought of using his voice for anything less than what is true and right and lasting. He becomes a man marked by a certain sorrow, a certain seriousness, not because he has lost all joy, but because he has seen too much to ever be casual again. The souls of men and women hang in the balance. The truth is too precious, too powerful to be treated carelessly. The one who called him to this task watches every word, every motive, every heartbeat, and that thought alone is enough to drive him to his knees. Burning responsibility is not the burden of ambition. It is not a hunger for bigger crowds or louder applause. If anything, it drives a man away from those temptations. It strips away the childish dreams of being admired and replaces them with the sobering realization that every opportunity to speak is an opportunity to either build up or tear down, to either faithfully represent the truth or distort it. It is the terrifying awareness that words have consequences far beyond what we can see. They shape lives. They shape destinies. They either lead people closer to life or closer to death. And once they are spoken, they cannot be undone. There are nights when a man who feels this burning responsibility will lie awake in the dark, staring at the ceiling, feeling the full weight of what he must do. It is not anxiety in the way the world defines it. It is not worry about what people will think of him. It is something deeper, something almost too heavy for words. It is the burden of knowing that if he fails to be faithful, if he waters down the truth, if he speaks for applause instead of conviction, then he has not only failed himself, he has failed the one who trusted him, and he has failed the souls who needed to hear the truth undiluted. That thought keeps him sober. That thought keeps him praying when others are sleeping. That thought keeps him trembling even as he stands to speak. A man who feels burning responsibility does not rush into the task. He does not step lightly behind the pulpit or onto the stage. He does not see the microphone as a trophy, but as a test. Every time he opens his mouth, he feels that he stands between two eternities, and that knowledge breaks his pride into 1,000 pieces. It is a holy fear, not of men, but of God. It is a fear that cries out, "Who is sufficient for these things?" It is the desperate realization that no amount of talent, no amount of preparation, no amount of human effort can guarantee faithfulness. It must be a work of grace from beginning to end. This responsibility is not seasonal. It is not something a man can lay down when he grows tired. It follows him into every room, every conversation, every moment of silence. It demands his attention, it shapes his prayers, it filters his words, it guards his actions. It is not a task he can clock out of at the end of the day. It is sewn into the very fabric of who he is. He knows that even when no one else is watching, even when no one else will know, he must live and speak as one who will one day give an account. And that reality is enough to drive all foolishness from him. There is a loneliness that comes with burning responsibility. It separates a man from those who would treat sacred things lightly. It places him in a different category, not because he desires it, but because the burden he carries will not allow him to settle into the easy patterns of the world around him. He is haunted by what is at stake. He is gripped by the brevity of life, the nearness of death, the certainty of judgment. While others joke and play, he weeps and pleads. While others chase after comfort and recognition, he seeks only to be found faithful. His heart burns within him, not because he is better than anyone else, but because he knows he is accountable for what he has been shown. Sometimes that responsibility feels unbearable. Sometimes it feels like it will crush him. He sees his own weakness, his own frailty, his own utter dependence, and he wonders how he can possibly carry on. But it is in those moments of breaking that the deepest strength is found. It is in those moments of helplessness that he clings most fiercely to the one who called him. He does not trust in himself. He does not trust in his experience or his reputation. He trusts only in the mercy that has carried him this far and will carry him to the end. Burning responsibility also produces a deep love. Love for the truth, love for the people, love for the one who is truth itself. It drives a man to labor not for personal gain, but for the good of others. It makes him willing to suffer loss, willing to endure rejection, willing to speak hard words when necessary, because he is not protecting himself. He is protecting the message. He is not living for the approval of the moment. He is living for the approval of the one who will judge in the end. Every time he speaks, every time he moves, every time he prays, he carries that fire within him. It is not a fire he started, and it is not a fire he can put out. It is a fire that compels him, a fire that purifies him, a fire that reminds him that he is not his own. He has been bought with a price. He has been entrusted with something that is not his to tamper with or to treat lightly. His life is no longer about what he wants, what he dreams, what he feels. His life is about being faithful to the trust he has been given, no matter the cost, no matter the pain, no matter the outcome. Would you like me to continue and write the next keynote, Fear and Trembling? In the exact same style, too. It will flow perfectly with the ones we've already built. Just say the word, of course. Here's the 1,000-word explanation of the keynote, Fear and Trembling. In a human, natural style without subheadings or a conclusion, exactly as you asked. Fear and trembling are not signs of weakness in the heart of a man who has been called to a sacred task. They are signs that he sees clearly. They are the evidence that he understands something of the terrible weight of standing before both God and men. They show that he is not playing games, that he is not treating serious things as common things. When a man feels fear and trembling, it is because he knows where he stands. It is because he knows who he stands before. It is because he knows that every word he speaks, every action he takes, every breath he draws must be measured against a holy standard that does not bend to his preferences or his pride. There is a kind of fear that cripples a man, and there is a kind of fear that saves him. The fear that cripples is the fear of men, the fear of losing face, the fear of being rejected, the fear of failing according to the world's standards. But the fear that saves, the fear that produces trembling, is the fear of God. It is the fear of misrepresenting Him. It is the fear of speaking where He has not spoken, of remaining silent where He has commanded a cry, of twisting His truth to fit the shifting opinions of the day. It is the fear of standing on the edge of eternity, knowing that a man will one day give an account not just for what he said, but for what he failed to say. It is a trembling that comes from understanding that sacred trust. When a man walks in fear and trembling, he does not trust himself. He knows better. He knows that left to himself he would stumble and fall. He knows that his own heart is deceitful, that pride lurks even in the noblest ambitions, that the temptation to soften the hard edges of the truth can creep in quietly, dressed up as wisdom or kindness. He does not trust his ability to discern perfectly. He does not trust his ability to speak flawlessly. He trusts only in the one who called him, the one who holds him fast, the one whose mercy is his only hope. Fear and trembling produce a carefulness in a man. They slow him down. They make him think before he speaks. They drive him to his knees before he ever steps behind a pulpit or onto a stage. They cause him to plead with God in secret before he dares to speak in public. He knows he cannot do this on his own. He knows that cleverness will not be enough, that passion will not be enough, that boldness alone will not be enough. Only the presence of God, only the sustaining grace of God, only the Spirit of God working in and through him will be enough. And so he trembles, and so he prays. Fear and trembling do not strip a man of courage. They purify it. They refine it. They take away the reckless, boastful, self-reliant courage that shouts loudly but crumbles under pressure. They replace it with a different kind of courage, a courage that is rooted not in self, confidence, but in God, confidence. It is the courage of a man who knows that he is nothing and that God is everything. It is the courage of a man who trembles at the thought of standing before men, but trembles even more at the thought of standing before God, having failed to be faithful. It is the courage of a man who fears sin more than suffering, who fears compromise more than criticism, who fears disobedience more than defeat. Fear and trembling make a man watchful. They make him guard his heart against pride, against bitterness, against weariness. They make him examine his motives not once, but constantly. They make him listen carefully to the quiet whisper of his conscience. They make him slow to speak and quick to repent. They make him long for purity, not because purity will win him the applause of others, but because impurity would grieve the heart of the one he loves and fears. They make him walk humbly, always aware of how easily he could fall, always aware of how desperately he needs grace every hour of every day. There is a trembling that grips a man when he realizes that eternity is real. It is not a theory to him. It is not a distant idea. It is a burning reality that overshadows everything else. He sees every face in the crowd not just as a person with opinions or emotions, but as an immortal soul that will live forever, either in the presence of God or separated from him. He feels the weight of that reality pressing down on him. He knows that the words he speaks today may echo in eternity. He knows that his faithfulness or his failure may have consequences far beyond anything he can see. And so he speaks with fear, and so he moves with trembling. Fear and trembling also produce dependence. They crush the illusion of self, sufficiency. They drive a man to cling to the word of God with desperate hands. They make him treasure the Scriptures not as tools to be manipulated, but as the very words of life. They make him beg for wisdom. They make him hunger for holiness. They make him cry out for help again and again and again. They keep him small in his own eyes, and that smallness is his strength, because in his smallness he finds the greatness of God. In his trembling he finds the steady hand that holds him up. There is no place for arrogance in the heart of a man who walks with fear and trembling. There is no place for swagger or bravado. There is only room for humility, for gratitude, for awe. There is only room for the quiet, unshakable resolve to be faithful, even if the world mocks him, even if the crowds walk away, even if the path grows lonely and hard. He does not tremble at the threats of men. He trembles at the thought of dishonoring his king, and that trembling strengthens him, that trembling steadies him. Fear and trembling are not enemies of love, they are companions to it. They are born out of love for the one who is holy, holy, holy. They are born out of love for the souls who must hear the truth. They are born out of love for the message that must not be corrupted or cheapened. A man who trembles is a man who cares deeply, so deeply that he cannot treat these things lightly, so deeply that he would rather be broken, rather be rejected, rather be despised than be found unfaithful. And so he walks forward, trembling not because he doubts the one who called him, but because he reveres him. He trembles not because he questions the power of the truth, but because he knows how easily human pride and weakness can get in the way of it. He moves forward, not in his own strength, but in the strength that is made perfect in weakness. He speaks, not with the easy confidence of a man who trusts in his own ability, but with the trembling boldness of a man who trusts only in the faithfulness of the one who called him. Would you like me to now continue writing the next keynote, Absolute Reliance on God? In the same deep, serious tone, just say the word "I'm ready." Here's the 1,000-word explanation of the keynote, Desperate Need for Divine Help, written exactly in a natural, human tone without subheadings or a conclusion. There is no true strength in a man who believes he can stand on his own. There is no true wisdom in the mind that thinks it can reason its way through the weight of eternity. There is no true power in a voice that echoes only with human confidence. A man who has been called to a holy task soon learns, whether through brokenness or failure, that without divine help he can do nothing. Not little, nothing. It is not a poetic exaggeration. It is a brutal, glorious truth that strips him down to the core of his being and leaves him crying out, begging for the help that only God can give. The desperate need for divine help is not a phase that a man passes through on his way to self-sufficiency. It is the very posture of his soul for as long as he draws breath. It is the deep, abiding knowledge that he is never strong enough, never wise enough, never pure enough, never devoted enough to accomplish the work he has been given. He sees his weakness not just in moments of crisis, but in every moment. He feels the barrenness of his own spirit when he tries to move forward without the breath of God upon him. He knows what it is to speak words that sound fine to the ears of men, but are empty and lifeless without the power of heaven. And that memory haunts him. That memory drives him to his knees again and again, whispering, "God, if you do not move, I have nothing to offer." There is a desperation that does not fade with time. It grows. It grows as a man sees more clearly the magnitude of the calling. It grows as he feels the weight of eternity pressing heavier on his chest. It grows as he watches the faces of men and women, each one carrying within them an immortal soul, each one standing at the brink of life or death, heaven or hell. It grows as he glimpses, even dimly, the majesty and holiness of the God he serves. The more he sees, the more he trembles. The more he understands, the more he pleads. He is not content with mere words. He is not content with emotional moments. He cries out for divine power, for divine life, for divine fire to fall upon dead bones and raise them to life. When a man knows his desperate need for divine help, prayer is not a discipline for him. It is a lifeline. It is not something he checks off a list. It is the oxygen he breathes. He prays because he must. He prays because he cannot imagine stepping onto a platform or into a conversation without first falling on his face before the throne of grace. He prays because he knows that no amount of preparation, no amount of study, no amount of passion will ever be enough if God himself does not move. His prayer life is marked not by polished phrases but by raw groans. It is marked by silence where words fail, by tears that words cannot capture, by a stubborn refusal to let go of the hem of God's garment until the blessing comes. The desperate need for divine help strips a man of pretense. It makes him real. It makes him honest. He does not pretend to have it all together. He does not pretend to be the hero of the story. He points again and again away from himself to the God who alone can save, who alone can transform, who alone can sustain. He speaks not as one who has mastered the art of ministry, but as one who is himself a beggar, who has found bread and longs to tell others where it may be found. There is a humility in him that cannot be faked. It is the humility of a man who has been to the end of himself and knows that without Christ he is bankrupt, ruined, hopeless. There are times when the desperate need for divine help feels like it will tear a man apart. Times when he sees so clearly the gap between what he is and what he must be that it nearly crushes him. Times when he feels the brokenness of the world, the hardness of human hearts, the coldness of his own spirit, and he cries out with groanings too deep for words. But it is in those moments, those desperate, soul-wrenching moments, that he is drawn nearest to the heart of God. It is there, in the ashes of his own strength, that he finds the fierce, unshakable mercy of the one who never grows weary, never fails, never forsakes. A man who knows his desperate need for divine help does not measure success the way the world does. He does not measure it by numbers, by applause, by visible results. He measures it by faithfulness. He measures it by obedience. He measures it by whether he has stood trembling before God, whether he has sought the face of God, whether he has proclaimed the truth of God without bending or breaking under the weight of fear or failure. And when he sees any fruit, when he sees any life changed, any heart awakened, he falls on his face again, weeping, knowing that it was not he who brought the fire, but God alone. This desperate dependence produces a rugged endurance. It makes a man press on when he would rather give up. It makes him stand firm when everything in him screams to run. It is not because he feels strong. It is because he knows he is weak, and because he knows that God's strength is made perfect in that weakness. It is because he has tasted the faithfulness of God in the pit, in the valley, in the storm, and he has found it sweeter than anything this world could offer. It is because he has seen that even when he is at his most broken, his most helpless, his most desperate, the arm of God is not shortened, nor is his ear too dull to hear. The desperate need for divine help guards a man against pride. It reminds him daily that he is not the answer. It keeps him from building his own little kingdom in the name of the King. It keeps him from confusing the gifts of God with the presence of God. It keeps him small in his own eyes and keeps God towering above all else. It keeps him hungry. It keeps him seeking. It keeps him trembling with the knowledge that apart from the vine he is a withered branch, fit only to be thrown away, and so he lives on his knees. He walks with a limp. He speaks with a trembling voice. He serves with empty hands stretched upward, always pleading, always reaching, always longing for more of the power, the presence, the mercy of the God who alone can take the offering of dust and breathe into it the breath of life. Would you like me to continue with the next keynote, Jealousy for God's Honor? In the exact same intense, real style, it would keep building this powerful flow you're creating. Just let me know.